Welcome, Derelicts. Today is a very, very special episode of the Derelict podcast. We celebrate 1 year. We made it. Woo! It's been a hell of a ride, you guys, and I want to personally thank each and every single one of you that's been on the journey with us. We have had many ups and downs. We've had many failures and struggles. We've had many successes all along the way. I truly, truly appreciate all of you, though, that continue to listen in each and every week. You are awesome. Your support does not go unnoticed. Thank you. As usual, today we're going to cut through the bullshit. We're going to face our failures, and we're going to own our stories. No sugarcoating, no playing victim, just the unfiltered truth about life, addiction, recovery, success, failure, the battle of being a man. We're going to talk about all those things today. So, because of that, again, special episode, I decided to do this one myself because there's several things that this date actually represents for me. So, if you do not know me yet, I am your host, Josh Tomioni. Today, we're going to be diving into some real shit. So if you're not used to us, get used to vulnerability, us like actually digging deep into it. And I think we have some really good things to share with you. So what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about intentions versus actions. We're going to talk about defining success, defining failure, the reason why it's so difficult for so many of us to actually admit that maybe we do have a failure. We're going to talk about anniversaries, difficult dates. The podcast launch is also almost the exact same date as the date that I got into recovery. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. You can be like, recovery for what? Well, stay tuned and you'll find out. And of course, failure in relationships, divorce, redefining failure though, in a way that might not make you feel as bad the next time you say it, because honestly, failure isn't the end. It's just one stepping stone to the next success that you're looking for. Cool? Here we go.
Welcome to the Derelict podcast. For the disparaged, depleted, and delinquent souls trying to find our way, we're talking about the scary part of the journey, where we don't know how it'll end. Let's be free to face our fucking failures in real time as the most unadulterated, truest version of who we are. No sugarcoating. Welcome to the shit show, you derelict.
Okay, so here, let's talk about this first. Something that I've definitely learned over the last year of doing a podcast is there are many definitions of success and failure. There's also a difference between intentions and actions, the war, let's say, between wanting and doing. So let me ask you a question. How many times have you wanted to change something but just didn't do it? You had the best intentions, but no action followed. Are you like me? Have you done that before? Or maybe it's because you fucked it up and you felt like, oh, maybe I can't actually do this, because here's the deal. Intentions don't mean shit. Have you found this out? Intentions mean nothing. Intentions are about as worthless as the shit on the bottom of my shoe. And here's the reason why. Everybody has good intentions, right? Who doesn't have good intentions, or whatever they believe good intentions to be? But when do intentions actually turn into action? That's when it matters. Are you like me? Have you gotten frustrated with other people that always intend to do something? They're like, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to do that. I'm going to commit to that. I'm going to do that, etc. And then again and 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 again, they don't do it. How frustrating is that? If you have a friend or a business partner, a lover, somebody you're married to, whoever, that just keeps saying, well, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. Maybe it's a friend trying to lose weight. Maybe it is a lover wanting to be more committed and connected to you. It's frustrating, right? It's frustrating when people are like, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And then they never do. All right. So here's the rub. You know who I'm really talking about here? Who else is brave enough to admit, like me, and be vulnerable enough, like me, to admit that maybe of all the people you lie to on the planet, maybe you lie to yourself the most, or you trick yourself, or you convince yourself like, I don't know, I'm not lying. I'm just wanting to do something and then not doing it. Well, isn't that what an intention is? So a really wise and profound man once told me, good intentions are the enemy of great actions. Let me say that again. Good intentions are the enemy of great actions. Now, that was me. I made up that quote. I don't think anybody else has said it, but maybe I stole it from somebody else. I don't know. But I really like it. And here's the reason why. It's actually coming from my new book, by the way. So I'm just going to mention that real quick. I have a book coming out. I'm really excited about it. I'm not sure when you're seeing this. If you're seeing this live, it's going to come out within the next couple months. So if you're watching this as an old podcast episode, it's probably already out. And once it does come out, we'll add it to the show notes. But it's all about being a derelict. So we're on the Derelict podcast. I'm a self-proclaimed derelict. I have derelict in the background. And here's the deal. It's the derelict, how one man fought, failed, and found real manhood. Because that is my purpose in life. And that is actually a bit of a journey, a bit of a memoir of what I went through. That quote came from the book. Good intentions are the enemy of great actions. Think about this. The strongest force in the human personality is the need to stay consistent with how we define ourselves. Eckhart Tolle, huge fan of him. The strongest force in the human personality is the need to stay consistent with how we define ourselves. So let's go back to this intention piece. If I intend to do something, but then I don't do it, I'm going to define myself internally, even if I don't say it, as a liar. Because eventually I'm going to stop believing myself. If I keep saying, hey, you got to do this, you got to do this, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do this, and then I don't do it, man, at a certain point, it gets hard for me to believe myself, right? I coach guys all the time, and one of the things I tell them is, if you're going to intend to do something, don't tell yourself that you're going to intend to do it. Only tell yourself and commit to it when you're committed to taking the action. Because the problem is, if you just intend to do something and then you tell yourself and then you don't do it, it only takes so many times to when you stop believing yourself. Think about it as a friend or a lover or a family member, like we talked about before. If there's somebody in your life that keeps saying they're going to do something, eventually you stop believing them. Well, guess what? We do the same thing to ourselves. And I've really found that out, man. I've been struggling with that because coming up on a year on the podcast, I'll be completely honest with you guys, like I always am, and vulnerable here. Like, I've thought about quitting. I really have. I'm like, I don't know. There's just not as many people listening as I wish that there were. We don't have as many followers as I expected to by this point. I thought we would be further along. And again, I'm really thankful for all of you watching and listening and everything else. So please don't take this as a dig. Also, I'm also really, if I can remove myself from that and remove myself from my unrealistic expectations, I'm actually really happy with where things are at. We've had amazing guests. We have really good conversations, and we've had really good podcast episodes. And we've had a lot of people listen, watch our social media feeds. But man, that doesn't mean that it doesn't feel like a failure sometimes, or it doesn't feel like, oh, I'm intending to do all these things, but how come I can't seem to just figure it out? Or how come I can't seem to figure it out to the level that I want to figure it out? I came across this really great quote from Machiavelli. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. I think this is intentions versus actions. It's really easy on social media or in a public space to convince people that whatever your intentions are is what you're actually doing behind the curtain, behind closed doors in private. It's much easier to do that than face-to-face in a relationship with somebody. You can't really get away with it in a relationship with somebody for too long until they find out. Now, you might still stay in the relationship because they might be codependent or needy with you, or just don't want to deal with it, or don't want to confront whatever the issue is. But it's much harder to hide, right? A couple other quotes from you. Stefan Arnio, who wrote my favorite book on masculinity, maybe my favorite book on masculinity till mine comes out. No, it'll probably still be my favorite book on masculinity. Hard Times Create Strong Men. So go ahead and check out the show notes. There's a link to it right there. Go buy it on Amazon and just crush it. It's a huge book, but it's a very fast read. Stefan Arnio said, real men don't make excuses. They stare their problems in the face and they own them. That's the difference between intentions and action. Intention is, well, maybe I'm going to do this, or I'm going to commit to do this, or I'm going to do this eventually. Action is, no. I see what the problem is. I'm going to go after it. So Let's talk about that. How does that relate to failure and success? Let's talk about that. But before we get there, how would you say that you define yourself? Would you define yourself as someone who does follow through on your actions, or are you an intention guy or gal? Always throwing out, well, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this, and then it doesn't happen. And it's okay. Don't feel bad if you are. I've done it plenty. I still do it. It's part of the reason why New Year's resolutions just don't work, right? Because most of us intend to do things for the entire year. And then I think it's by like January 16th or something. Like, it's very, very short. It's only a couple week period where most people just give up on them entirely. Setting them for the entire year and literally maybe lasts a couple weeks. So don't feel bad, but let's just reflect. Maybe take a moment to reflect on yourself. What have I told myself? This is a question I would encourage you to ask yourself. What have I told myself that I was going to do that I still haven't done? Think about whatever comes to mind for you. Whatever that is, here's what I would encourage you to do. Write it down and then ask yourself, what excuses am I making for not doing it? Now, excuses can be a tricky word because it might be shame producing. That's not the intention here though. Just stay curious. Let's use a couple examples. I would like to release 30 pounds. So I'd encourage any of you that are looking at losing weight, don't say that you're losing it. And here's the reason why. When you're losing it, you could find it again, right? What if you release it? What if you let it go? Just like any bad habit in your life. What if I just let it go? Then I never want it to come back again. Okay, so here's the example. Let's say that I want to release 30 pounds of fat off of my body. And I've intended to do that. And I've even maybe taken some action to do that. What is in my head? Remember, stay curious here. What is in my head that is keeping me from doing that? And here's where you got to have some brutal honesty. Maybe it's, well, I'm always out and about and it's really hard for me to cook. And then when I eat out, I eat less healthy. Okay, that's honest. That's honest. Maybe it's, well, I just really like those sweets at night. Sorry, I just do. Okay. Maybe it's, well, if I'm honest with you, Josh, I'm not really honest with myself about what I'm actually eating. I'm telling people and myself that I'm eating healthy, but it's not. Maybe it's, well, I just feel like every time I've tried in the past, it hasn't worked. Why is this time going to be any different? What about this? Maybe it's, I really want to meet that person. I really want a partner. I really want somebody to be with. Okay. Whether it's a spouse or a significant other, a partner, doesn't matter. I want to be with somebody for a long time. Okay. Now, again, let's go through the same exercise. What intentions did you have? Well, my intentions were I was going to go look, I was going to go find somebody, I was going to go online, I was going to do all these things. Okay. What did your actions produce? Did you actually do those things? When you had a chance to go out with your friends, to potentially be in a place where you could mingle with people, did you do it? Or were you like me even a week ago where some people invited me out and then I just decided I'm tired, I'm just going to stay home? When my intention was to go out and see if maybe I could meet somebody. And I've done it several times the last several months with being really busy with work and such. So I get it. I 100% get it. What about this one? How do you talk to yourself about it? If you're going out looking for somebody, what's the conversation like in your head? Is it all men are fill in the blank? All women are fill in the blank? All men are dogs. All women are full of themselves. All men are egotistical. All women are only wanting money. All men are complete pigs. All women are sluts. Fill in the blank. What thought is in your mind that is breaking down the action that you want to produce? In other words, what thought is actually creating intention in your mind that's producing the opposite of action? If you or anyone you know, have you met that person, right? That says all men are blank, all women are blank, right? You've met that person. I have too. And maybe you are that person. So now it's time to be honest. What if your intention is, I really want this type of partner, and then you list out the characteristics of whatever that partner looks like. And that's your intention. But then you believe that all men are blank or all women are blank. What are the odds that you're more likely going to see the blank in that person? In other words, if your actions were, I'm going to show up, I'm going to be authentic, I'm going to be present, I'm I'm going to be in the situation. I'm going to be myself. And then we'll just see what happens. Guess what? Good things happen. If I go out with a thought of all women are just after my money, guess what? I'm going to run into the women that are after my money, right? Fair? Or if I go out saying, well, all women don't even want to connect, they just want to get attention, guess what? I'm going to run into the women that don't want to connect, that just want attention. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So as we get to talking about failure and success, what do you consider yourself? Are you truly a man of action, or are you a man of intention? Now, again, stay curious about this. Don't shame yourself. Stay curious about it, because then you can do something about it. I started this podcast as a failure podcast. And by I mean we. I started a podcast with a buddy of mine. His name is Tyler. He's a great guy. We're still friends. We just hung out last night as of the time of this recording. Go back and listen to the early episodes. You'll hear a lot of him speaking and a lot of our back and forth. It was actually really fun. But why did we start the podcast? We started the podcast because we looked out into the business atmosphere, and both of us have had the same experience where we'll go to business conferences, we'll go listen to people speak, and all they're talking about is success all the time. But it's a formula. The formula is, here's how I tried to do something. Here's how I failed. Here's how I got through the failure. Now here's the success, and here's the result of my success. And the result of my success usually is I sold my company for billions of dollars. That's usually the formula when you go listen to somebody. Prove me wrong in the comments. Feel free. That's the formula. So here's what Tyler and I said. We said, why does it have to be like that? Or in other words, why can't we listen to that person or hear from them when they're in the midst of that failure, when they're in the midst of like trying to figure their shit out? Like, it's not working yet. Why can't we hear it that time? So we said, well, what if we started a podcast where we did that, and where we just let people deal with like what was happening in their life, the obstacles, the failures while they're going through it. Let's not wait for the person to sell the company for $1 billion. Let's hear from them when they're in the struggle, when they're dealing with the shit, right? So that's why we started it. And it's morphed since then. The passion has always been to help men specifically, because for whatever reason, men have a really difficult time getting vulnerable here and dealing with any problems or dealing with the fact of any failure. So let's talk about failure here for a second. You know, a lot of people really have a hard time talking about failure. Again, especially men. Hell, they even have a hard time admitting that they have any sort of failures. Have you noticed that? Why is that, do you think? So I think it's because the second we hear the word failure, most of us don't even think about an event or a mistake or something small that we did. Most of us think that we are a failure. It produces shame. If I say I failed at something, that produces shame that I am a failure. When we first started this podcast, I had a set of questions that I would ask guests every single time. And one of the questions was, how did you fail recently at X? Whatever the name of the topic was. And what I found is, after doing that dozens of times, people were really uncomfortable with the word. So then I realized, I have to add a previous question, and that is, how do you define failure? Because let's make sure we're defining it the right way before you're having a hard time bringing that shame and that regret and that embarrassment. So let's do that. What does failure actually mean? If you look up the definition of failure, here's what you're going to find. Failure is the omission of expected or required action. That's it. Nothing more than that. It's not I'm failure as a person. It's not this, my whole life is over. It's not some life sentence or unfixable disaster, as I think a lot of people look at it. It's just not what was needed or expected. So let me break that down in a way that an 8-year-old could understand it. I just think of my youngest child is 8 right now. Imagine you're supposed to clean your room before dinner, but you don't. Okay? That's a failure. And it's not a failure because you're a bad kid. It's not a failure because you're a worthless child. It's only a failure because you didn't do what was expected. And that's all failure is. Not doing something the way that it was needed to be done. So think about this. If that's the definition of failure, don't you fail every single day of your life? I sure do. Let's come up with a couple other silly examples. Let's say that I'm walking across the room and I trip. That by definition is failure, because the expected result is I walk across the room without tripping. The very fact that I tripped is a failure. Let's say that I was trying to do something on my computer and I couldn't quite figure something out, or I clicked the wrong button. That's a failure. Let's say that I asked somebody out and they say no. That's a failure because I expected them to say yes. Let's say that I try to call somebody and they don't answer the phone. By definition, that's a failure. Here's my point. I think we all need to calm down a little bit about the word failure and just breathe it in a little bit. If I can breathe in my failures and the times that I don't do what I'm expected to do or what I'm required to do or what I'm trying to do, it makes it a lot less difficult to do life. Because if I can just accept me as me, failures and all, that relieves a lot of pressure for me. Do you feel that? I do. I hope you do too. So if failure is just not doing something that is expected or required, guess what? That means that failure isn't the end. It means that it's not an absolute. It means that I'm not a failure as a person. It means that, there's actually hope still because it has nothing to do with me. So if failure is just not doing something required or expected, guess what? It's an opportunity. It's feedback. It's the exact thing that you want in your life. Because if you try to do something and it doesn't work, you have two choices. You can feel shitty about yourself and then not do it again, or you can learn from it, figure out what the fuck didn't go right, and then go do it and do it better. It's the ultimate teacher. I don't know about your life, but my life, man, the only way that I've learned really big things is through failure. It's through something internally saying, hey, something needs to change here. And then me actually listening to that instead of being like, fuck you, nothing needs to change, I'm perfect, which I've done plenty of times. It's actually listening to that and realizing, you're right. Something does need to change here. Something does need to change here. I fail, I learn, I try again. So here's the question. Are you willing to redefine failure? I've had to redefine failure in terms of this podcast. I started a podcast with my friend based on failure, based on dealing with failure. Then guess what happened? My friend was like, peace, I'm out. I don't want to do this anymore. Podcast failed, right? Then after that, I had to go through this grieving process of figuring out, like, what am I doing with my life? Like, what is the point of this podcast? How am I going to do this? Am I going to be able to do this by myself, without him, etc.? I had to figure that out. I decided, hey, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to redo the podcast and try to figure out a way to make it work now. Right after that happens, I create this podcast studio myself. I was very proud of it. I'm not usually a very handy guy. Right after that happened, this whole thing flooded because it's right next to a room that has 2 water heaters in it. The water heaters burst and flooded the entire room. So now my podcast studio failed. So now I don't have my podcast host. Podcast studio failed. I'm not making any technology work at this point. I have another decision to make. I decide, great, I'm going to fix the podcast studio. We're going to keep going. We do that. I don't get up to the numbers that I want. I don't get to the subscribers I want. I don't get to any of this stuff. I have to continually remind myself, okay, that is a failure, because if I'm expecting certain things and they're not happening, that by definition is a failure, as we just talked about that. But what does that teach me? And what is the inner thing that's keeping me going? We get up to almost a year of podcasts, and I start to have to ask myself the really tough question, do you want to keep doing this? Is this something that's actually bringing you joy and actually helping expand your mission in life? And every time I ask myself that question, you know what the answer is? Yes. Because the reason I'm here is because I have a tremendous heart for men finding themselves, finding their true masculinity, but finding it in a vulnerable way where they have to deal with their problems and their shit and not just ignore them and not just work them out, right? There's so much shit online, and pretty much always the answer for guys is work out harder, get stronger muscles, and work harder at your business. Those are not the only 2 answers, you guys. Those are not the only 2 answers to make you the most authentic, amazing man that you were meant to be. It leaves so many things on the side. What about other aspects of your physical life? Not just having muscles, but feeling energized and alive and amazing and having great sex and everything else physically. or just being able to walk around, go on hikes, do the things that you want to do. I've met plenty of guys that are super buff and have these amazing muscles, but they can't go on a hike without having a cramp every 3 seconds. Is that what you want for your life? Or do you want to be able to go on hikes all the time without having cramps, right? It's a different question. What about your mental life? What about the things that you tell yourself that maybe you shouldn't? What about the ways that you're failing yourself by your limiting mindsets, your limiting beliefs, the things that you're saying to yourself, the same shit that I do to myself, the same shit where I'm like, you're a failure because, and I don't necessarily use those words, but I say the same shit in my head. I know I'm not the only one. I know you guys do this also. What about that? Are you working on that? Are you trying to help be more loving and kind and supportive and confident with yourself? Not looking in a mirror and saying bullshit that doesn't resonate or some sort of affirmations that aren't even true. That's not what we're talking about here. I'm talking about a clear mindset. Tony Robbins says you don't experience life. You experience the life you focus on. So if you're focused on telling yourself all this shit, that's the life you're going to live. If I'm constantly telling myself I'm not enough, you don't have enough followers, your message isn't getting out to enough people, you're not doing this well enough, you're not as good of a podcast host as you could be, all this shit, that's what I'm going to focus on. So here's the thing. I could look at a failure podcast like the one that I'm doing, the Derelict podcast, and I could say it's a failure. You lost your buddy. You fucked up your studio. You don't have the followers and growth and everything that you wanted to have. It's not making you the money that you wish that it was. I could count all of these different things and I would be right. And then guess what? Then my mind is only focused on all the shit. Same with failure. If I'm looking at that failure and I'm becoming a worse human being for it, in other words, I'm shaming myself for anything that's happening, guess what? Results are going to follow. I'm going to have the exact same results. But if I focus on the fact that I am celebrating, this is exciting, you guys. We're celebrating 1 year of episodes. I think this is episode 55. Do you know how many podcasts make it to 55 episodes? It's around 5%, meaning that I've out podcasted 95% of people that started a podcast. That's amazing. You know how I did it? Just by continuing to do it, because I made a commitment to myself and I said, look, doesn't matter how much you feel like you fail all along the way here. You're going to do this for a year. You're going to do this for 2 years. That was my original commitment. I said, you're going to do this for 2 years. And here we are, and we're still going. So does that make me crazy? I don't know. Maybe. You know that Mr. Beast, the most popular and successful and monetarily insane YouTuber ever, didn't even make any headway for 9 years? He made 9 years of YouTube videos before he really started having any sort of financial success. 9 years. I saw an interview of him recently because the guy amazes me. I mean, he's much younger than me. He has bigger health problems than I do, and he's just crushing the world. And one of the things he was talking about is he said, look, it didn't matter. The followers didn't matter. The growth didn't matter. None of it mattered because I knew why I was doing it. And I knew that in my heart, I wanted to become the best YouTuber in the world. And I just had to figure out how to get there. That is one hell of a way to look at failure. As Thomas Edison said, I didn't fail at making the light bulb 10,000 times. I found 10,000 ways it didn't work. But guess what? That quote is inaccurate because he actually did fail 10,000 times. If you look at the definition of failure, he did. He expected an outcome. He didn't get it. But what he's saying is he didn't feel like a failure. He didn't shame himself. He didn't label himself failure. He labeled each and every one of those as a failure to get to the intended result. And everyone will know his name probably for eternity because of what he created. So here's the real question. Are you willing to redefine failure? Are you willing to see it not as a personal attack, not as something that's shameful or to be embarrassed by, shamed by, etc.? Are you willing to redefine it by its actual definition? That it's just an omission, it's just a miss, it's just a slip. And in fact, that is required for success. That is required for the next level of growth. I'm so excited for the second year of this podcast. You want to know why? Because I made probably all the failures in the book the first year. I mean, literally not being able to stick with partners, not being able to, both business and personal for that matter. I've gone through breakups personally. I've gone through breakups professionally. I fucked up the studio several times. I messed up technology several times. We went from audio to video without knowing what we were doing. We switched providers. We've changed social media. We've updated editors. You name it. I've pretty much failed at all of it. And yet we're still here. Why? Because my mission surpasses all that. I'm here because I know that if there's one person listening to this and getting something out of it, and that one person, that one person I'm talking to right now, if you're watching this or listening to this and you get something out of it to make a better 2.0 version of yourself, it's a win. It's a win. You don't have to pay me anything. You don't even have to tell me. Because I know, just based on the comments that I get, that there's a lot of you. On that note, would you do me a favor? Do me a personal favor and add some comments on YouTube. Whether you're listening to this or watching this on Spotify or Apple or Amazon or wherever it is, go to YouTube and just leave a comment. I'm not asking you to go leave a positive comment. I'm just asking you to leave a comment about how something in this episode affected you. Will you do that? Here's what I've learned after being in sales for almost 2 decades. Yes, I'm old. And that is, if I'm in a room presenting something and I'm either asking for questions or I'm getting feedback, if somebody raises their hand to ask a question, there's at least 10 other people or 9 other people in the room that have the exact same question, at least. Here's what I found online. I think it's an even higher percentage. I've found that if one person leaves a comment or asks a question or makes a statement, there's at least 100 times that many people thinking about the same thing. And that number amplifies with every single view you get. So here's my request. Will you please go to YouTube and just leave a comment about anything? I don't care. You can say, hey, I hate your beard. Say whatever you want. I've heard all the shitty comments from all the shitty people that are insecure with themselves, so they feel like they have to bring me down. I'm fine. Go for it. I can take it. But what I'd ask you to is leave a comment that actually is productive, that helps people. Like, this is what I heard. I disagree with this, or this is what I heard. I agree with this. Will you do that for me, please? That'd be great. So back to the real question. Here's the real question. Are you willing to define failure the way it's actually defined? Not as a personal attack, not as shame, not as something to be embarrassed by, not as something you did wrong, but simply as an omission of what was expected, an omission of what was intended to be done. If my intention is to work out in the morning, or my intention is to make my bed in the morning, and I don't do it, guess what? That's a failure. Now, if I don't do that enough, I'm convincing myself that I'm not going to do it. That's when it becomes a problem. If I can stop and say, oh man, that was my intention and I didn't do it, I either need to decide that I'm not going to do that. That's not going to be my intention. In other words, I'm not going to commit to that anymore because I need to stop lying to myself, or I need to just do it, come hell or high water every single morning. Both of those are okay. You guys ever experienced that? I'm sure you have. When you go down a certain path and you're like, yeah, this is going to work, this is going to work, this is going to work, and it doesn't work. Well, guess what? Sometimes you have to switch courses and just be like, I guess I'm not going to do it. That's fine. That could just be your failure telling you a different way to go. That's okay also. So what's the benefit? Once you take failure off of this like ultimate pedestal of like, this is who I am and I can't fail because of this reason. Once you take it off of that, it becomes a lot less scary. And then guess what? You stop being afraid of it. I've found in my life that when I can remove failure being this huge deal, and failure is just something that I do every single day, then I'm not afraid of failing. Like, who cares? So here's a story that was a little embarrassing for myself, and I basically called myself a failure because of it. So I was out with my girls. We're at a coffee shop. We were hanging out. They were taking pictures of me. I needed pictures for my dating profile, actually. And my daughter was doing a great job. So I was instructing her. She was taking these pictures of me. I got them treats at a coffee shop. We were playing cards. We were just having a grand old time. It was a wonderful date. Besides her taking pictures of me with my phone, I was completely off my phone, no screen time. It was awesome. Loved it. I love going on dates with my girls. If you're a dad, by the way, hear me. While your girls are young enough to where they still want to go on dates with you, go on dates with them as much as you humanly possibly can. And why? Because you want to teach them how men should treat them. Because they're either going to learn from you or they're going to learn from that first guy. What are the odds that you're going to teach them something better than that first guy is going to teach them? Yeah, I've been dating for a few years now since my divorce. And I've met many women that did not have dads that did that. Take a wild guess how they act. They're out of control. They're insecure. They're so desiring of dad acceptance and love that they'll do a lot of things they shouldn't do, a lot of things that if you were their dad, you would be disapproving of. Guaranteed. So take your daughters on dates. Okay. All right. So back to my story. Me and the girls are at this coffee shop. And again, taking pictures, playing cards, having a grand old time. I saw this lady in the coffee shop and she actually came up to, so she was kind of looking over at us. It was this lady that looked like around my age and then a guy that looked, a bit older. But it was one of those situations where you're like, I don't know if they're together. Maybe that's her dad or uncle or something, but they're probably together. Yeah, I don't know. You just never know, right? Anyway, she just kind of kept looking over at me and I was like, I don't know. She's probably just, looking at the girls. Like, I don't ever think women are looking at me. I'm just, whatever. It passes by often. So I'm like, yeah, she's probably just looking at the girls, whatever. She eventually comes over. She's like, hey, can I take a picture of all of you guys? I was like, actually, yeah, that would be great. So I had her take a picture of me and the girls. And then she kind of kept trying to keep the conversation going. And I was being friendly and we were both being friendly. And she went back and sat down and she just was like, she just had this glow about her and she kept smiling and she kept looking over and that sort of thing. And honestly, looking back on it, man, I missed all the cues. She was doing what women do. She was sending me all the cues of like, I'm interested in you. I want to have a conversation with you, etc. I could tell after cues and 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 cues. After I thought about it later, I was like, oh man, she definitely did. So we get near the end of the coffee and I'm like, you know what? I kind of want to go chat with her. Like maybe I could get her number, go out with her. She was cute. I liked her. It was pretty evident at that point that she was not with this man. That was either her dad or brother or, just somebody older that she knew, whatever. You could just tell that they weren't together. And I was like, yeah, I really want to do that. Now, I have a thing inside of me where I really don't do that when I'm with my kids. I don't know why. I don't know if that's good or bad. I just don't like flirting and hitting on women when my kids are with me. I don't know if that really matters or not. I just kind of don't. So I was already in this state and I was like, that's okay. I can just go get her number and just be really friendly. And I didn't. We went outside. We were about to leave. When we got outside, I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking, man, you should go back in there and just get her number. But I didn't. Now, it says courage on my license plate of my car. I would say in general, I try to be a pretty courageous guy. My namesake, Joshua from the Bible, was told one thing over and over and over and over again when Moses was passing the baton to him. And that was, be strong and courageous. Now, if you know anything about Joshua from the Bible, he was one of the most courageous men. Agree or disagree with what he did is immaterial. He was one of the most courageous men in the Bible. There is actually nothing negative spoken of about him in any of the scriptures. Tall order. There's plenty of negative stuff spoken about me. It's a tall order to live up to. But here's the deal. I didn't do it. Why? Because I was afraid. I was afraid of what might happen. Based on what? Nothing. She was giving me all the signals she wanted to connect. And I didn't do it out of fear, out of what if I'm embarrassed? What if I'm shamed? What if I look like a failure? What if she says no? Who fucking cares? Who fucking cares? I don't know if I was just having an insecure day or something that day, but that is not the first and it will not be the last time that that's happened. Does anybody relate? Where you make this thing in your head such a big thing that failure is inevitable. Coming back to the podcast, having expectations of how many people watch, how many people listen, how many followers I have, etc., is the ultimate way to ultimately fail. Ultimately fail. Not just fail, but ultimately fail. Because if I have all of those expectations and I have all of those requirements, odds of them not all 100% coming to fruition, almost 100%. Most men are chasing someone else's version of success and they're avoiding someone else's version of failure. Eckhart Tolle says, if you let the world tell you who you are, you're listening to an insane person tell you who you are. If you let the world or other people tell you who you are, you're listening to insanity. You're listening to an insane person. You're going to a mental institution and asking them, who do you think I am? Who should I be? How should I be? That's crazy. Yet we do it all the time, don't we? I don't know, maybe you don't. I do. Let me pull out my social media feed. What is success? What do I need to have success? Well, it's the car, it's the house, it's the family, it's the whatever, fill in the blank. Being a part of the right political party, being of the right church, going to the right group, saying the right things, having the right content, having X number of followers, having X number of views, having X in the bank, whatever it is, letting other people define success and failure for me. So what matters then? If you don't want the world to tell you, you don't want other men to tell you what success or failure is, what matters? Tony Robbins once said, it's not what you get that makes you happy. It's who you become. It's not what you get that makes you happy. It's who you become. Tony Robbins. I agree with that so much. Through every success, through every failure, it's not about the failure. It's not about shaming myself to say, oh man, what a terrible person I am. It's about the journey. It's about the journey through those failures. And then what's on the other side of it? I don't know. Let's just go through and see what happens. It's okay if you get a little mud on your face. No one has ever proved to do anything worth anything without getting a little mud on their face. Success isn't about what society tells you it is. It's about what sets your soul on fire. It's about your mission. It's about your vision. It's about what you want out of your life and why you are on this planet. It's the whole reason I'm here. It's the whole reason I'm still doing this a year later, because a little over a year ago, I had a calling and the calling said, dude, when you I was 39 at the time. The calling spoke like a bro. Dude, when you're 50, what's the purpose in your life? Why are you here? Who are you helping? Who are you serving? Who are you here to be? And the answer resoundingly was the same that it is today. And that is help men. Help men deal with their struggles, their problems, their failures, and help them become more authentic men. What's one way to do this? Redefining or going back to the original definition of failure and success and redefining that for yourself. Do you need help doing with that? Write a comment below. Write success or failure below. I'll reach out to you. Let's have a conversation. I'm here to help you do that. Please let me help you. We learn together. I learn just as much sometimes through my coaching clients as they do from me. It's amazing. It's just like teaching. I love it. I love it. So I'll have a conversation with anybody. Reach out. Let me know how I can help. So here's the deal. If you've listened to the podcast a while, at all, you'll know that a lot of this stemmed from my divorce. That was really the beginning of my healing journey. So we'll talk about that here in a second, because what I do want to talk about as well is addiction and recovery and what that means. Here's another good quote when you're thinking about success and failure. David Deida says, stop hoping for completion of anything in life. The master's journey is endless. What if we just took this idea of success and this idea of failure, aka ultimate success and ultimate failure? What if we just took those ideas and just put them on a shelf and just said, let's just not even focus on that at all. Let's just focus on what do I do next and what's the journey? And then what is the journey telling me? Irregardless of whether it's a success or a failure. What if we just looked at, well, this happened in the journey. What is that telling me? Oh, it's telling me this. Great, then let's do this. And it's just one next step in the journey. What if we all did that together? I'm going to commit to doing that more as of today, because I think that'd be helpful for my journey. I hope you do the same. So just think about this. Success isn't about getting more. It's about appreciating what you've already achieved. It's not what you do. It's about who you become in the process. Success is never about getting to some ultimate destination. It's always about appreciating the journey and growing in the journey. And here, I'll prove it to you. Think about something that you wanted to accomplish in your life. Maybe it was a big sales goal. Maybe it was buying your first home. Maybe it was meeting the love of your life. Maybe it was, helping your kids out with something. Some sort of goal that you're working towards, okay? And let's be specific. Let's think of more of a tangible goal. Something where you wanted to buy that car, or you wanted to get that ring, or you wanted to go to that event, or you wanted to buy that fill in the blank, okay? You worked really hard to get it. You eventually got it. How long were you happy? Think about it. A year? A month? A week? A day? An hour? 5 minutes? You ever had that experience? I remember a specific experience last year when I hit my biggest revenue month ever. I was just crushing it. This was about 6 months ago or so. Still my biggest to date, even in the last 6 months. It was a really big month. It was nice. I was stoked because I worked my ass off to hit it. Put a lot of work in, did all the things. I was excited for about a few minutes until the reality set in of, well, how much of this am I keeping? And then how much of this has to go to taxes? And then how much of this has to go to the team? And then how much does it have to go to this and that and this and that and this and that? And then it was gone. The money wasn't gone, just that success feeling was gone, because the feeling was based on the tangible efforts. It wasn't about the journey to get there. If my focus had been on the journey that got me to that best month ever, maybe I'd still be feeling joyous over it, excited about it. Thinking about this podcast, I've had to retrain my brain this last year when things haven't gone the way that I've wanted them to go. And I've had to retrain my brain to think, what's your mission? Are you accomplishing it through the podcast? Are you accomplishing it by the messaging that you're giving out in the podcast? And are you enjoying the journey? And are you learning from the journey? And as long as those things are true, it's a success. Fuck everybody that tells you it's not. That's true for your life. Don't let other people tell you that their definition of failure or their definition of success is the correct definition, because most likely it's not. I proved that to you earlier just by giving you the actual definition of failure, which is not the definition anyone thinks that it is. So think about that. What's your definition now of failure? What's your definition of success? And how does that play into what you're doing in your life? Write it down. Look at it every single day. Comment below. Tell us what it is. I'd love to hear it. All right. So in honor of 1 year of the podcast, I want to talk a little bit about this date for me. So we've talked in the past about how dates can be insidious, how dates can be really difficult. Have you ever experienced that, where you have an anniversary of something, whether it's a relationship or an event? Somebody passed away, your relationship ended, partnership, divorce, somebody cheated on you, whatever it is. Do you have any dates in your life that you find that stuff just comes up around that time? I do. There's a couple of them. There's a time in August, there's a time in December, and there's a time in March. I've talked about these in the past, so go back and watch some old ones. August has a lot to do with my divorce. It's when I dated, got married, got divorced, started dating another person, broke up with another person. A lot of breakups and get-togethers happen in August for some reason for me. So that was a difficult one for me for a long time. I think I'm finally past that, but it was for a long time. December was a difficult one for me for a long time because it was my birthday. It's the day after Christmas. And historically has been a very, very tough day for me. I think we're past that one also. And then there's March. As of the time that this podcast episode airs, we will be 2 days away from my recovery anniversary. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that, because we're going to talk a little bit about anniversaries, and we're going to talk about addiction. We're going to talk about recovery. I started my recovery on March 22nd, 2018, because I hit my rock bottom in my life on March 21st, 2018. Now, I've had several rock bottoms in my life, but this was the one that really translated into, you got to get your shit together. Your life needs to change. This is not the life that you want to be living. So if you want to hear more about that story, my book, go check it out. Current working title is The Derelict: How One Man Fought, Failed, and Found Real Manhood. Check it out. In the meantime, let's talk a little bit about this. So here is a very brief version of the story. In August 21st of 2018, I was in Vegas and made some really dumb mistakes. I had to face a truth at that point in my life. And that was that my life was out of control. And if I kept going down that path, I wouldn't have a life to speak of, at least definitely not the life that I wanted. here's the thing that's so insidious about addiction. It never seems like an addiction. It never seems like it's something that's out of control. It never seems like an addiction to the person that's going through it until they've gotten to that point where they realize this is a problem. The majority of people that have addictions are going through life completely unaware of even having an addiction. Now, if you're listening to this or watching this and you're in that place, just know that you're not alone. If you've gotten to a point where you realize, man, maybe this is out of control. I don't know if I can stop this. I don't want to do this, but I just keep doing it. You have to be the one to decide, but reach out. There are plenty of people that can help you. Reach out to me. Send me a message. Our links to all my socials are below. Send me a message. Reach out to me. I will personally respond to your message. Comment below that you want some help. This is not me trying to sell you some sort of product or service. This is me saying, I'm a guy who's gone through this and I made it out the other side and I'm living my best, most authentic life ever only because I was able to make it through the other side. But the reason I was able to make it through the other side is because I had people that coached me and mentored me and sponsored me to get through to the other side. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but no one's coming to save you. If you want to do it, you have to do it yourself. There's only one way to do this, and that is that you have to get a better relationship, an authentic, loving relationship with yourself and your higher power, whatever you call that higher power. That's the only way. So I had a guy on the podcast several months ago, and he spoke a lot about addiction, and he was speaking specifically of sexual addiction, but I think this applies to any addiction. Here's what he said. It's an addiction when I know that it is causing pain. I know that it's causing destruction. I don't want the pain to continue, but I keep doing it. Logan Hufford. Yeah. So there's two elements, according to him, as far as addiction. It's causing pain, and he doesn't want to keep causing pain, or causing pain and doesn't know how to stop causing pain. Now, a lot of people think of addiction as drugs and alcohol. Okay? And drugs and alcohol can be an addiction. But addiction is just about the shit that you use to numb yourself. So the easiest way for me to describe addiction is removing yourself from the present moment because you're uncomfortable and you're trying to numb that uncomfortability. Said another way, addiction is anything that you use to numb pain can very easily become an addiction. Anything that you use continually to numb pain is an addiction. So could that be drugs? Sure. Could it be alcohol? Sure. Could it be sex, love, work, food, relationships, shopping, pornography, social media, you name it. Anything, if you're feeling, I'm getting this uncomfortable emotion, this uncomfortable feeling, and I don't want to experience it, and I don't want to sit with it, and I don't want to deal with it. Anything that you use to escape that is an addiction. Anything that you use to deal with that is not. That's the difference. Are you using what you're using to deal with that emotion and work through it? Or are you using it to escape that emotion and disregard it? So if you know that a healthy activity for yourself is going on walks, and something happens to where you get very angry and upset, and you go for a walk because you want to clear your head, you want to consider why you're angry, you want to be curious about it, and you want to deal with that emotion, great, that's healthy. That's you dealing with the emotion. If you get angry and it's not about going on walks, and you say, hey, I don't want to feel this anger. I don't want to have this anger. I want to ignore it. I want to medicate it. And you don't have to say these things, right? You could just do it. But in that same situation, if you have anger and you decide, I don't want to feel this anger. There's nothing about me that wants to feel this anger, deal with this anger, be present with this anger, and then you choose to do something to escape the anger, that's an addiction. And again, what might that be? Could it be alcohol? Sure. Could it be drugs? Sure. What else could it be? Could it be sex, love, pornography, dating, relationships, work, overeating, shopping, social media, numbing out in front of the TV? You name it. It can be all those things. Now, none of those things necessarily are bad in and of themselves. They're bad because of the fact that you're using it to numb the pain. You're using it to numb the uncomfortable emotion that if you don't deal with, by the way, take it from a guy who's still on the road to recovery. If you don't deal with it, it will come back stronger and harder and more intense. And I promise you, if you don't deal with it the first time and then it comes back, it's only more difficult. But life will keep giving you chances to deal with this until you deal with it. But I promise you, it's rough if you don't deal with it the first time. Going back to my favorite book on masculinity, Hard Times Create Strong Men, Stefan Arnio. In that book, he said, a boy becomes a man when he chooses to take responsibility for everything in his life. Here's my question, and it's a difficult one because it's one that most people don't want to face. What's the addiction in your life that you're not dealing with? Now, let me take the pressure off. There's no shame here. Just like we talked about with failure before. Failure is just, I was intended to do something, I didn't do it. Well, guess what? The same can be true of an addiction. So there's no shame here. This doesn't mean you're a bad person. I firmly believe we all have addictions we struggle with in all our life. 100% of humans do. So if that's the case, here's the question to get honest with yourself. What is that thing in your life that maybe you have less control over than you think you do? What is that thing in your life that is causing pain and destruction that you don't have control over, but that you're not dealing with? What is that thing in your life that you are using to numb uncomfortable emotions, uncomfortable feelings, uncomfortable outcomes? What is that thing in your life that you are using to distract yourself from difficult present moments? Whatever that thing is your addiction. That's the thing you're using to numb, to medicate. Is it prescription drugs? Is it non-prescription drugs? Is it alcohol? Is it sex? Is it love? Is it dependency on another person? Is it going from one relationship to the next? Is it eating and snacking and gorging yourself? Is it shopping and just spending money? Are you a workaholic? Is it just constantly digging yourself into work? What is it? It's something, because it's something for everyone. Once you find out what it is too, here's the beauty, then you can do something about it. So here's the deal. Healing comes not from avoiding pain, but by walking through it with awareness and self-compassion. Jenna Ramirzma. She wrote a book called Altogether You. Highly recommend it. Put it in the show notes. Healing comes not from avoiding pain, but by walking through it with awareness and self-compassion. Jenna Ramirzma. So why do I say that? Well, because until you realize this is the thing, this is what I'm using to not be present, this is the thing I'm using to medicate, this is the thing I'm using to numb the difficult stuff I'm going through, until you realize what that is, you're willing to admit what it is, and then you're realizing, man, something's got to change. Until you get there, you can't heal. So what does that mean? It means that you can't move forward to the next level of wherever you're supposed to be. And this is an ongoing process, you guys. I still deal with this stuff. Like I just told you, I'm celebrating 7 years of recovery. Thank you very much. All my 12-steppers out there, 7 years. I'm very proud to say that. 7 years in recovery trying to learn how to do this. And I'm still learning how to do it. I still make mistakes. I still fail. I still fall flat on my ass. I still do all these things. But the one thing that I'm doing much better now than I sure as hell was doing 7 years ago is that I'm not avoiding pain. I'm dealing with the pain when it shows up. I'm giving it its day in court. I'm trying to stay as present as humanly possible, avoiding numbing out. Don't get me wrong, I still numb out. I'm definitely not perfect. There's plenty of times I've numbed out, but I try my best just to stay present. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? How do I go through this? And just sometimes it's just sitting with it. I don't sit very well. Like I'm very active. I always want to be doing something. But sometimes it's just sitting with it and just realizing like, where is it? Where is it in my body? How am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? And just being curious about it. Because until you get to that point, there's nothing to do. You can't move on. So I'd encourage you guys to do that. Your failures and mistakes don't define who you are. The way you respond to them and the action you take does. So be the man that is willing to have a failure, willing to have a mistake, willing to fuck up, and then also be the man that takes action and does the next right thing and learns from that mistake, learns from that failure, realizes it's just part of the journey. There's nothing to be afraid of. I don't need to worry about failure because I know that it's just a part of the journey. It will just then teach me, if I'm open to hearing from it, it will teach me what to do next. That's a beautiful thing. Everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and everyone who humbles himself will be exalted. Jesus said that, and I think it's really true. Are you humbling yourself or are you exalting yourself? Are you trying to find ways of serving people and serving yourself, making sure that you're going through the failures and the struggles and realizing that you're on the journey and then helping other people along with you? I'm trying my best to do that. I hope I've been able to do that with you guys for this last year of the podcast. And I'm so excited for the next year because I feel like I got a lot of that failure and a lot of that shit out of the way. And this next year is just going to be phenomenally amazing. So thanks for sticking with us. And I look forward to another year with you guys. It's going to be amazing. Okay, a couple things as we wrap up. If you're looking for real wisdom and you heard a good quote or a book that you liked, check out the show notes. I'm going to put them there. I'm also going to put a link to our website that has a whole host of resources, a bunch of books, etc., that you can check out. And if there's any books that you don't see there and you think I'm missing something, reach out, send me a message, make a comment. I would love to, or just make a comment right now. Make a comment. What's your favorite book? What's the book that, as we were talking about all these things, it triggered like, oh, I really like that one, or I really like this YouTube clip. Add it to the comments. I'd love to hear it. All right, here's the most important thing though. Derelicts, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up to episodes. Thank you for listening, watching. I'm so glad that you found value in it and that you continue to tune in. I'm really excited for you to read my book, coming out soon, The Derelict: How One Man Fought, Failed, and Found Real Manhood, at a bookstore near you soon. So thank you again from the bottom of my heart. Please like and subscribe as usual this episode. It really helps us. Appreciate that. And until next time, own your failures, fight your battles, realize it's just part of the journey. Be okay failing. Find yourself. Find true masculinity. Fight. Don't give up. Be persistent. Love you all. Talk to you soon.